Most people think you need 10, 20, even 50 acres to actually feed a family. That's a lie. And I'm about to show you a single acre that produces more food than most 40-acre farms ever will. No tractors, no trust fund, just 1 acre laid out the right way. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to do it yourself. Here's the problem. Millions of people buy land dreaming of self-sufficiency, and within 2 years, most of them quit. Not because they didn't work hard, because they set it up wrong from day one. They plant a garden in the wrong spot, they put animals where they don't belong, they spend thousands of dollars on fencing, on feed, on equipment, and at the end of the season, they're still buying groceries every single week. Sound familiar? I've talked to homesteaders who sank $15,000, $20,000 into their property in the first year alone. Fruit trees planted in the shade, chicken coops a quarter-mile from the house, garden beds flooding every spring because nobody checked how water moves across the land. This isn't a lack of effort, it's a lack of a plan. And that gap between effort and result is exactly what drains people. It's exhausting to work this hard and still feel like you're falling behind. But here's the thing nobody talks about. There's a layout, a system that turns one single acre into a food-producing machine. It's not some secret formula locked away in an expensive course. It's zone-based design, the same principle real permaculture farms use, just scaled down to fit a backyard-sized property. And once you see how the pieces fit together, you'll wonder why anyone ever thought they needed more land than this. Let's start with the big picture. Picture your acre as a pie, cut into zones based on how often you need to visit each part of it. The stuff you touch every single day goes closest to your house. The stuff you touch once a month goes farthest away. This one shift in thinking is the difference between a homestead that runs smoothly and one that burns you out in a year. Zone 1 is your kitchen garden, and it sits right outside your back door. This is maybe 1/10 of an acre, but it's doing heavy lifting. Raised beds 4 feet wide so you can reach the middle without stepping in the soil. This is where you grow the vegetables you use constantly: tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, herbs, greens. Here's where most people get it wrong. They put their vegetable garden way out back because it looks nicer from the house. Then winter comes, it's cold and muddy, and they stop harvesting greens because the walk feels like a chore. Keep it close. If it's not convenient, you won't use it, no matter how good your intentions are. Right next to that kitchen garden, you want a small greenhouse, or at least a cold frame. Even an 8 by 10-foot structure extends your growing season by 2 full months on each end. That's 4 extra months of fresh food a year, from a space smaller than most people's living rooms. Zone 2 is your small livestock area, and this is where a family of 5 gets serious protein without serious acreage. A movable chicken coop, what people call a chicken tractor, housing 8 to 12 laying hens. That's roughly 6 to 10 eggs a day, more than enough for a family, with extra to trade or sell. The trick is moving that coop every few days across a section of your yard. The chickens fertilize the soil as they go, they eat pests, and you never deal with a stinking, packed dirt yard like a stationary coop creates. I made this mistake myself on my first setup. I built a permanent coop with a permanent run, and within 1 season it was a mud pit that smelled the entire summer. Movable housing solved it completely. Alongside the chickens, if your zoning allows it, 2 or 3 dairy goats or a couple of rabbits round out your protein and dairy. Goats need roughly a 1/4 acre of rotational pasture for 2 animals, and 2 goats in milk can produce close to a gallon of milk a day combined. That's enough for drinking, cheese, and yogurt for a family of 5, with almost no grain purchased if your pasture is managed well.
Zone 3 is your main growing area, your production garden. This is the biggest chunk of your acre, maybe 1/3 of it, and it's where you grow the calorie-dense staples. Potatoes, corn, beans, squash, things you can actually store and eat through winter. A well-managed 30 by 50-foot plot of potatoes alone can produce 600 to 800 pounds of food in a season. Let that sink in for a second. That's not a garden hobby, that's a pantry. Here's the part nobody tells you about this zone. Most beginners plant everything in straight rows with wide walking paths, and they waste 40% of their space on paths instead of plants. Switch to a bed system, even simple raised rows, 4 feet wide with narrow 18-inch paths, and you instantly reclaim that lost space. Same acre, dramatically more food. Zone 4 is your orchard and perennial zone, and this is the part people underestimate the most because the payoff isn't immediate. Fruit trees take 2 to 5 years to produce well, but once they do, they produce for decades with very little ongoing work. A tenth of an acre can hold 15 to 20 dwarf and semi-dwarf fruit trees, apples, pears, peaches, plums. Underneath them, berry bushes, blueberries, raspberries, currants. This layer is what separates a garden from a homestead. It's food that shows up year after year, whether or not you had a busy season. Zone 5 is your water and compost systems, and honestly, this is the zone that makes or breaks everything else. Rainwater catchment off your roof and outbuildings can collect thousands of gallons a year, even in a modest climate. A simple system, gutters into a couple of 500-gallon tanks, can cut your irrigation water bill by more than half in the growing season. And compost, made from kitchen scraps, chicken bedding, and garden waste, replaces bagged fertilizer almost entirely after the first year. This is the part that turns your homestead from something that costs money every month into something that mostly feeds itself. Now let's talk numbers, because this only matters if it actually saves money and produces real food. A properly laid out 1-acre homestead run by a family that's consistent, not perfect, just consistent, can realistically produce 60 to 70% of that family's fresh food needs. That includes vegetables, eggs, dairy, and fruit. Add in preserved and stored food from a good harvest season, and some families get remarkably close to 80% self-sufficient on groceries. On average, that's a savings of $400 to $600 a month on a typical grocery bill for a family of 5. Over a year, that's $5,000 to $7,000 staying in your pocket instead of going to a supermarket. The upfront cost isn't nothing. Raised beds, fencing, a basic coop, some fruit trees, water tanks. Realistically, you're looking at $3,000 to $5,000 to set this up properly in year 1, less if you build things yourself and buy second-hand materials. But compare that to the $20,000 mistakes I mentioned earlier, spent on the wrong layout, in the wrong order, without a plan. This system pays for itself in under a year, and then it just keeps paying. Let's talk about before and after, because this is where it gets real. Before this kind of layout, a lot of families I've spoken with describe the same feeling: working constantly, spending constantly, and still feeling behind. Groceries every week, a garden that produces a handful of tomatoes and not much else, chickens that cost more in feed than the eggs are worth. It's discouraging. It makes people feel like homesteading is a scam, like it only works for people with way more land or way more money. After this layout, the story changes completely. Mornings start with fresh eggs already in the kitchen because the coop is 30 feet from the back door. Dinner includes vegetables picked 20 minutes earlier. The freezer and pantry are stocked from a single growing season instead of running to the store every few days. And there's this deeper shift, too, one that's harder to put a price tag on, a sense of control, a sense that if prices spike, if supply chains get shaky, your family isn't entirely dependent on a system you don't control. That peace of mind is worth more than the dollar savings, honestly. One more thing before we wrap up, because I think this matters more than any number I've given you. This layout works on 1 acre, but the actual lesson isn't about acreage at all. It's about intention. Most failed homesteads aren't failing because of small land. They're failing because of no plan. Zones, not guesswork. Convenience for daily tasks, distance for occasional ones. Water and soil handled first before a single seed goes in the ground. Get that order right, and 1 acre will outperform 10 acres run without a plan every single time. So here's what I want you to do. If you're sitting on land right now, even a small yard, even a single acre, stop asking whether you have enough space. You almost certainly do. Start asking whether you have the right layout.
Go back through these 5 zones, sketch your own property, figure out what's closest to your house right now and what should be. That single exercise, done this weekend, could save you years of trial and error. If this gave you a clearer picture of what's actually possible on a small piece of land, hit subscribe because we're breaking down the exact systems, the exact costs, and the exact mistakes to avoid in the videos coming next. And tell me in the comments, how much land are you working with right now? And what's the one thing on your property that's in the wrong place? I read every single one, and some of the best layout ideas in this series have come straight from you. 1 acre can feed a family of 5. The only question left is whether you're going to plan it that way or find out the hard way like so many people before you.